Hibernian Community Foundation, here to talk to us about the Academy programme at Hibernian, at their foundation. Firstly, before we get into Hibs, can you tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah, so initially my background was in marketing. So I had 10 years out of university where I was in various marketing executive posts and designing brochures and designing leaflets, as well as promotions. And then I had a slight change in career path whereby I'd been volunteering for football. So I thought, why don't I try and make a career out of that and do something I love doing? So my first job was at 𝗪𝗏𝗯, where I was the football development officer there for 3 years. I went into a similar post with Glasgow Life, which was the charitable arm of Glasgow City Council, as a football development officer. And I've now been at Hibernian for 4 years as football development manager. Similar posts from the two previous, part funded through the Scottish FA, and I've always been coaching in that time as well through Club Academy Scotland.
So you said you were at first a volunteer. As a fellow volunteer, how long were you in the sort of volunteering process before you made it to full-time work in football?
Oh wow. Probably the best part of 4 years, I think. I volunteered at Spartans, where I took the under-13s team and under-15s team when they were at Inverleith Park. And then that allowed me to go through my coaching certificates and my coaching licenses, and then to get to a point where, you know, your CV is robust enough that you can go and put yourself forward for posts and things like that. So yeah, a lot of interviews in that time as well. You know, it wasn't, you know, the first time lucky, but I was fortunate enough to get involved in 𝗪𝗏𝗯 in 2009. I've been in similar posts since then.
So now that you see yourself at Hibernian, how do you feel like the Academy programme's going?
So the Academy, the online Zoom programme that we're speaking about today has been a real partnership with ourselves and the club. So we've got 𝗲𝗃𝗯𝗲𝗃𝗏 who's not long started as the sporting director at Hibernian Football Club. Gareth Evans is the head of the youth phase at the Academy, as well as you know, the admin staff that are in Finlay, who kind of pulls together all the boys teams down at the professional aspect of what we do. Within Hibernian Community Foundation, we've got a boys community academy, and we've also got a girls academy as well, which feeds into our women's first team. So between the three academies, and obviously into this lockdown and not being able to be on the pitch, we kind of got together as a staff, the guys that I've mentioned there, and how do we put on something that's engaging, that keeps the kids involved in what we do, keeps them active, because they can't be on the football pitch. So on a Monday, we have the men's first team who come on and do a question and answers with ourselves, and we host that from 7 o'clock. On Wednesday, we then have a women's first team player come on, and then following that, the head of medicine and sports science at the club, Stephen Kernin, who's absolutely brilliant, comes on and gets them physically active. So it's a real collaboration between everyone, to be honest with you, and it's just been timetabling it over the past couple of months to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to kind of view it.
Would you imagine being key to engaging with young people that have seen themselves sort of taken out of the game for so long?
The big thing for us is just kind of having that communication more than anything else. Look, I think we've got to keep parents informed of what we do, because, you know, the landscape's constantly changing there. Kids learn in different ways as well, you know, so as much as we're away from the pitch, I still think we can add to the players' learning as well, and getting an insight into, you know, professional players' journeys and professional players' day-to-day routines can rub off on them as well. Within the community academies, we also have a Google Classroom for each age group, which is full of either learning materials specific to football or non-football related. There's some educational resources in there as well, but we also post all the videos that we record over the course of the week on there as well, so the players can go back to it. So it allows them to learn, to pick up different bits and pieces, and as I say, it's a tool that sits either on their laptop or on their phones, or their parents' phones for that matter, if they're too young, and they can learn away from the pitch as much as on it as well, because our time's limited with them. You know, you only see them for training twice a week, in games at the weekend when we are back. So how do we keep them involved in what we do and keep them close to us as well? And that's, I think it's been really beneficial.
Do you think the idea behind collaborating with the sort of 3 academies, do you feel like having the senior players talk to the young players, do you feel that builds a sort of togetherness in the club?
Huge, and it makes the players approachable as well, and it makes them, you know, it's tangible to the kids that are watching it as well, because the advice that they're getting back from the players is, you know, I was your age one time, and here's what I went through, and here's the peaks and troughs that my journey to the first team, you know, entails. And just because they're playing first team, you know, it doesn't mean to say that they don't have, you know, the trials and tribulations of a backstory. You know, we've had Scott Allen, who's come on and spoke really openly about, you know, his diabetes and the recent struggles that he's had a little bit. We had the club captain, David Gray, who's come on, and he's had long-term injuries. He went down to Man United and got injured on loan, and he was able to recollect that and pass information on to the kids on that side as well as the successes, obviously, that all these players have had as well, and, you know, the life skills that football brings to them. So the format on an evening is that the kids will post questions that they want answered, and we'll host that through a shared screen with all the questions on it, and the players will then kind of pick through that and hopefully give the kids a little bit of guidance and a little bit of information.
With a lot of lockdown being a sort of new ground for a lot of academies all through the country, do you feel like this way that you're adapting is sort of a leader in terms of your competitors? Do you?
No, you know, everyone's, you know, Zoom has absolutely transformed the way everyone's, you know, everyone's working. You know, this, what we're doing just now, albeit that the technology existed way before lockdown, we're now just kind of capitalising on that as well. The 2 big ones for me are probably over the Zoom aspect of it in Google Classroom, because it's just allowed us a different way of engaging with the players. You know, on Google Classroom, we can post them tasks, we can ask them questions. You know, it's proper schoolwork almost, but at the same token, we've got to balance that off with, you know, being a parent myself. I can appreciate that parents have got homeschooling over and above everything else that this lockdown, in particular this one, because it's been winter, it seems to have been a little bit different. So with that married all together, I think we're being conscious of the players can do it in their own time rather than us giving them set times. So that's why it's been useful that they can go back and watch the Q&As again, because the time slots that we've given won't necessarily suit everyone, but definitely having the first team involvement, and you know, that's thanks to the guys down at the training centre, and Graham and Finlay and Gareth and Steve for their input. It definitely ramps it up a little bit, as well as Stuart Maguire coordinating and Joelle, the women's players.
Do you feel like once you said this sort of during the lockdown period, of course, but say hopefully in the second half of the year, COVID is not so much an issue, do you feel like you'll still keep aspects of this Zoom sort of sessions going? Yeah,
I think we will, and I think what we'll do is we'll also, we're in discussions with the women's team at the moment of, you know, a player mentoring a team. So, you know, one of the women's first team, it might not necessarily be every week or every fortnight, but it might be once a month. You know, we've got that facility to have a half-hour, 45-minute Zoom call with one of the first team players to then go and share how their month has been, how their experiences have been over the past number of weeks, and the kids can then ask questions thereafter. And I think, you know, once that, and it is open now, obviously, that channel of communication, I think we'll definitely will continue it. The Google Classroom stuff, away from the academy side of things, is something that we've used for coach education, football coach education for that matter, and also learning resources as well. So we're keen to kind of expand on that as we kind of go through it. I still think we're scratching the surface a little bit with a lot of it. But yeah, the technology, everyone's adapted, you know, and I look at across social media and things like that, the clubs are doing so many brilliant things with it, and it's just a tool that there's there to be used, and I think everyone will use it when we come out of it eventually.
And the final question of the interview: would you think that, say, as in a view of like sort of generations, do you think COVID would have a big impact on sort of the generations of sort of academy years? So
With her development,
yeah.
It will and it won't. I think the physical aspect of it, of being on a pitch, is something that you can't replicate. But I do think kids have taken a keener interest in their actual learning away from the pitch and almost understanding the game a little bit. You know, when we had this conversation with one of the academy guys recently, and it was the kids came back. Actually, there wasn't any kind of significant difference, to be honest with you. So I think that side of things, you know, schoolwork indefinitely is obviously a hot topic at the moment, with regards to do kids repeat a year and things like that. But you know, the nature of the age groups that we're working with, ultimately we're wanting them to enjoy their football as much as they can. It's maybe not at the serious end, if you want to call it that, whereby, you know, they're looking at their fitness, or they're trying to keep themselves technically and tactically, you know, at a point. We did come back intermittently before December, obviously, so there was a period where we were back. But no, I think when they did come back, then the kind of stats that came back was that their fitness wasn't any. There wasn't any kind of real serious dip on that side of things. The big thing, obviously, is just they've not been playing as much football as what they would have been.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks very much, Gary, for coming
No
on.
worries.
And thank you.
Not at all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.